Alhai. Mongolia, the state in East Asia bordering on Russia in the north and on China in the south, has no outlet to the sea. This state is a participant of almost all structures of the Union and also some structures of the CIS as the observer. Official language, Mongolian, with writing on Cyrillics. Earlier for record the old Mongolian letter was used. The name of the country comes from an ethnonym Mongols, which origin, in turn, continues to remain a subject of disputes. So, a number of researchers, in particular N.T.s. Monkiev notes that an ethnonym Mongol, for the first time meets in the Chinese sources, Zhu Tanshu. The old story of the Tang dynasty is made in 945. In shape Tuman Shive, Mongol Shivetsi, and in Zin Tangshu. A modern history dynasty's Tang is made in 1045-1060. In shape Manvie, tribe Manvie. In various Gdansky and Chinese sources of the 12th century for these tribes names a Menka, Mengel, Mengutse, a Menga were also used. 238. D. Banzarav Mongol connected an ethnonym with historical place names. Mon River and Mount Mona. According to Histosu, the people living in nearby places of Mount Mon in Ordosa found Mon's name. To whom the word a goal, therefore there was a name the Mongol increased. The goal is the Mongolian word meaning central, the main. Also the version according to which the name the Mongol arose by connection of the Mongolian words eternal and the goal fire moved forward. The Mongolian scientists. Biasuk assumes that the name the Mongol appeared as a result of modification of the Mongolian word silver. About communication of concepts, the Mongol and M. Silver is told in the Chinese texts, Heidie Shilai 1237. In them it is said that the population of Great Mongolia called the state a Great Silver Dynasty. SBR. Surektiev notes, from a set of interpretation of the term the Mongol is allocated the version about his origin from the Tungzuso-Mankurian word the manga/manga/manga meaning strong, elastic, hard. According to 50. Dialect. The name the Mongol is a Tungzuso-Mankurian tracing paper of the Mongolian word which is translated as, the big stream flowing from mountains to the lowland, rough, fast and strong. Promptly rushing stream. The version gained further development in A. Oker's works. In prehistoric times the territory of Mongolia was covered by the woods and swamps, on plateous meadows and steppes were spread. The first hominids, whose remains are found in the territory of Mongolia, about 850,000 years have age. Front part of a cranial cover of Homo sapiens from location of Salk hit is dated age 34950-33900 years ago. In the 4th century BB in the steppe adjoining the outskirts of Gobi there are new people Hana. In the 3rd century BB of a Hana, inhabiting the territory of Mongolia, entered fight against the Chinese states. In 202 the first empire of nomad tribes, the empire of Hun under leadership Mojin Shinuyu, the son of steppe nomads was created BB. About existence of the empire to a Han, there are many certificates from the Chinese sources of different eras. Hanatu 93 years had governed in the Mongolian steppe, and after them several Mongolian, Turkic, Uyghur and Kyrgyz Khanates such as Xianbi, Zhushansky Khaganate, East Turkic Khaganate, the Uyghur Khaganate, the Kyrgyz Khaganate and Kadansky Khaganate appeared.
At the beginning of the 12th century, separate Mongolian tribes made the next attempt to unite to the state, which reminded rather an union of tribes and became history under the name Hamid Mongol.
I was his first governor to Haid Khan. His grandson of Habilhan was already able to win a temporary victory over the neighboring regions of the Empire of Jin, and from him paid off with a small tribute. However, his successor of Ambigay-Han was seized with the hostile Mongolian tribe of Tatars. Further, the name Tatars was assigned to Turkic nationalities and transferred, which betrayed his painful execution.
In several years, Tatars killed the
Temujin's father, Temujin, future Genghis Khan, to the power. Temujin went gradually. At first Van Khan, the governor of Karat in the central Mongolia, rendered him protection. As soon as Temujin found enough supporters, he subdued three strongest breeding associations in Mongolia. The Tatar in the east, 1202. The former patrons of Karat in the central Mongolia, 1203. And Naiman in the west, 1204.
On Kurultai, a congress of the Mongolian nobility in 1206, he was proclaimed by the Supreme Khan of all Mongols and received Genghis Khan's title.
Borders of the Mongolian Empire in the 13th century. Orange. And the field of resettlement, modern Mongols. Red.
The Mongolian Empire appeared in 1206 as a result of association of the Mongolian tribes between Manchuria and Altai Mountains and Genghis Khan's declarations as the Supreme Khan.
Genghis Khan ruled Mongolia from 1206 to 1227.
The Mongolian state considerably extended due to conducting a number of military campaigns by Genghis Khan, known for the cruelty. They captured most part of Asia and the territory of China.
Great Khan's Ulis. Central Asia. The Chagatai Ulis. Iran. State of Ilchanav. And a part of Kievan Rus. Ulis Juchi, or the Golden Horde. It was the largest empire, including the biggest in world history, the adjacent territory. It stretched from modern Poland in the west to Korea in the east, and from Siberia to the Gulf of Oman and Vietnam in the south and the north.
In 1260, after transferring of the capital from Karakoram to Hanbalik in the territory of modern China, penetration of Tibetan Buddhism on Wednesday of the Mongolian nobility began.
In 1351, as a result of the anti-Mongolian revolt, the Empire of Yuan was destroyed, and China separated from Mongolia. In 1380, troops of the Chinese Ming dynasty burned Karakoram. After return of Yuan-sty Khans to Mongolia, the dynasty Northern Yuan was announced. The subsequent period, the so-called period of small Khans, was characterized by the weak power of the Great Khan and continuous internal wars. Repeatedly supreme power in the country passed to for example, of Aratsky Izentasha. Last time Dayanhanya was succeeded to unite separate Mongolian to Manitou Bafmunk by the end of the 15th century. In the 16th century I got into Mongolia again and the Tibetan Buddhism took firm positions.
The Mongolian and Aratsky Khans and princes actively were involved in the Tibetan civil strifes between schools Gelugpa and Kagyu.
The late Mongolian states as a part of the Empire of Qing were occupied by Manchurians. In 1636, the Inner Mongolia, nowadays the autonomous region of China. In 1691, External Mongolia, nowadays the state of Mongolia. In 1755, Urat Mongolia, the Dungarian Khanate, nowadays the territory of Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region of China and East Kazakhstan. In 1756, Tanurinche, Tuva, which is nowadays a part of Russia. Manchurians included them in structure of the All-China Empire of Qing operated by a Manchurian dynasty of Xinjiang.
Again, Mongolia found independence in 1911 during the Sinkiski Revolution, which destroyed the Empire of Qing.
Bogdohansky Mongolia. On June 23, 1913, a general view on Yusu.
In 1911 in China there was Sinkiski Revolution which destroyed the Empire of Qing.
In 1911 in Mongolia there was a national revolution.
At the head of the Mongolian state proclaimed on December 1, 1911 there was Bogdohan.
Bogdojejin 8.
Under the Kyoto Contract of 1915, Mongolia was recognized as autonomy as a part of the Republic of China.
In 1919 the country was occupied by Chinese, and autonomy was liquidated by the General Zhu Shuzingam. In 1921 the division of the Russian General R.F.
Von and Sternberger together with Mongols beat out Chinese from the capital of Mongolia, Urgi.
In the summer of 1921 of Army of Rusvos, the Far East Republic and Red Mongols inflicted a number of defeats over Ungern. In Urge the national government was created, Bogdojejin's power was limited. After his death in 1924 Mongolia was announced by the People's Republic. Up to the end of World War II by the only state which recognized independence of Mongolia there was the USSR.
In the fall of 1920 during the civil war in Russia an Asian division of the Baron Ungern was forced out to Mongolia.
After crossing of borders she went to the capital at once. Mongolia was occupied by the Chinese troops, and the Asian division was met as liberators. Hurriedly the Yusu didn't manage to be taken. Nevertheless, having saved up forces and having collected a reinforcement from the Mongol and the White Guards filtering from Russia, the Baron went for storm again. Paradoxically, but having almost five-fold overweight and being unfavorable, from the tactical point of view, defense, Chinese lost fight. In the spring of 1921 Mongolia found freedom.
The disgraced monarch Bogdojejin VIII returned the throne and in gratitude granted Von Ungern a title of the Khan. For Ungern came it is time to fulfill an old dream, to restore the empire of Chinggis Khan, to lift Russia against Bolsheviks and to broaden with forces of a multinational Asian division the country to the sizes of the great Mongolian Empire.
His aspirations weren't fated to come true. The campaign of 1921 against Bolsheviks terminated in crash. The troops frayed by heavy fighting betrayed the commander and handed over him to Bolsheviks. In 1924, after the death of the religious leader and the monarch of Bogdohan, with support from the Soviet Union, the Mongolian People's Republic was proclaimed. Telsadine Gendon, Anandin Amar and Horlajine Choibalsan came to the power.
At active economic and organizational technical support of the USSR measures for reorganization and development of economy of manner on the socialist beginnings were taken.
In 1929 in the country almost along with the USSR collectivization was begun. In 1929-1931 the cattle and property was withdrawn from large feudal lords. The state supported farms of poor and average Arat, undertook measures on increase in marketability of their farms. Both the simplest forms of labor cooperation and creation of state farms were encouraged.
In 1940, in comparison with 1932, the volume of gross output of the industry increased by 22 times.
Since 1934 Stalin demanded from Gendon to develop repressions against Buddhist clergy, what Gendon didn't want, being deeply religious person.
He tried to counterbalance influence of Moscow and even accused Stalin of red imperialism, for as paid.
In 1936 it was displaced from all posts and it is placed under house arrest, and then invited to rest to the Black Sea, arrested and shot in Moscow in 1937. On his place there was a chairman of KIHN Anandin Amar who too soon was removed from the posts and is shot.
Choibalsan, which was accurately following all instructions of Stalin, began to run the country.
Since the beginning of the 1930th years, repressions on a sample of Soviet gained the strength. Collectivization of cattle at monks, destruction of Buddhist monasteries and enemies of the people, aristocrats, monks, counter-revolutionaries and the Japanese agents. In Mongolia by 1920 about one-third of male population were monks, and about 750 monasteries functioned. Was held. 36,000 people. That is about 5% of the population of the country. Became the victims of the political repressions taking place in 1937, 1938, more than a half of which were made by Buddhist monks. The religion was forbidden, hundreds of monasteries and temples were liquidated. Only 6 monasteries in whole or in part survived. The Japanese imperialism was for Mongolia the major foreign policy problem, especially after invasion of Japanese into the next Manchuria in 1931.
In the Soviet-Japanese War of 1939, joint actions of the Soviet and Mongolian troops in Hakrangola reflected aggression of Japan on the territory of the Republic.
Mongolia, as the ally of the USSR, rendered the feasible economic help of the USSR in days of the Great Patriotic War, also took part in defeat of the Japanese Kwantunsky Army in 1945.
Awards ceremony of the Mongolian and Russian veterans, participants of battle on Hakrangola, the state awards of Russia and Mongolia. In August 1945, the Mongolian troops also participated in the Soviet-Mongolian strategic offensive operation in the Inner Mongolia. The threat of reunion of the inner and external Mongolia forced China to go to the offer on a referendum on recognition of the status quo and independence of the Mongolian People's Republic.
The referendum took place on October 20, 1945 and, according to official figures, 99% of the voters entered in lists voted for independence. After creation of the People's Republic of China, both countries mutually recognized one another on October 6, 1949. After recognition of independence from China, Mongolia was recognized by other states. China several times asked about return to external Mongolia, but received flat refusal from CCC. The Republic of China, Taiwan.
In connection with loss by the Nationalist Party Kuomintang in 2002 of the majority in parliament, became the last country which recognized independence of Mongolia.
On January 26, 1952, Yumsejin Sedenbal, the former colleague of Choibalsan, came to the power.
In 1956 and again in 1962, Nori condemned a cult of personality of Choibalsan. In the country there was rather not repressive collectivization of agriculture, which was followed by introduction in a people at large of free medicine and education and certain social guarantees.
In 1961, Mana became the member of the Union. In 1962, the member of the Organization of Comecon headed by the Usser. In the territory of Mongolia, parts of the 39th General Army and other bodies of the Transbaikal Military District. 55,000 people of the Usser were placed. Nana supported the Usser during aggravation of the Soviet-Chinese relationship.
Mongolia became the recipient of the Massachusetts economic help from the Usser and a number of the country's Comecon.
Due to the serious illness, in August 1984, with direct participation of the Central Committee of the Sisu Bayou, Sedenbal was displaced from all posts, sent to pension, and up to death in 1991 was in Moscow.
Jambin Batmonk became the Secretary General of the Central Committee of Nari, the Chairman of Presidium of Great National Hero.
In 1987, Batmonk, after the Usser, announced a course towards reorganization. On December 7, 1989, the first took place and authorized the authorities a meeting which slogans became a course towards democratization of the country, updating of party, conducting rigid fight against the unworthy public phenomena. In January-March 1990, there were several opposition parties and movements. The Movement of Socialist Democracy, the Mongolian Democratic Party, the Mongolian Social Democratic Party, and others. In March 1990, there took place the plenum of Nari, on which members of her Politburo resigned, and the new Secretary General Gombahaven Okerbat was elected on March 21, 1990. In May 1990, at a session of Vonen, the article of the Constitution about the leading Nari role was excluded, the law on political parties, the decision on early elections and on establishment in the country of small state Ural, and a post of the president are adopted. The plenum of the Central Committee of Party also made decisions about an exception of ranks of Nari by Sedbala. He was in absentia accused that in the period of his management of the country many party members suffered prosecutions and persecution.
About the beginning of work on rehabilitation innocently convicts and victims in days of political repressions of 1930, the 1950th years. At the first meeting of the updated Politburo of the Central Committee of Nari, the decision on transition to self-financing of Nari and reduction of officialdom, in particular, the office of the Central Committee of Party, was made.
Also, the Politburo resolved the edition of the new independent newspaper. In August 1990, there took place the first elections on a multi-party basis of Great National Hero, on which victory was won by Nari. 61.7% of voices. Despite a victory, Nari went for creation of the first coalition government, though the first president Ponsalmagan Okerbat, the delegate of Nari, was elected not by national vote, and to the sessions of Great National Hero. In February 1991, at the 20th Congress of Nari B. Tashandan, who proclaimed as party ideology so-called centrist ideology, was elected the Secretary General. After the ban of the sisu in September 1991, the President P. Okabat approved the law of Nori about refusal of party membership at execution of functions, distributed to the President, the Vice President, the Chairman of Small Hurul, Chairman of the courts, members of courts and judges of all levels, prosecutors and investigators of all levels, the military personnel, police, the state security agencies, correctional facilities, diplomatic services, heads and the staff of the State Press and Information Service. In January 1992, the new Constitution of Mongolia, and in February of the same year, the new Nori program was adopted. However, Nori kept the power. On the elections to Great State Hurul, which took place in June 1992, she received 70 places, Democratic Alliance, only 4 places, the Mongolian Social Democratic Party -1 place, and 1 mandate was provided to the non-party independent candidate.
Nori began to carry out quickly market reforms, in particular privatization. In 1993, the private sector produced 60% of GDP of the country.
The livestock of the cattle increased from 25.8 million heads in 1990 up to 28.5 million heads in 1995. Soon the economic situation sharply worsened. Inflation for 1992 was 352%, and at the beginning of 1993 a new Ulaanbaatar rationing system was introduced. In June 1993, general presidential elections were won by P. Okabat, 57.8% of voices, who refused membership in Nori earlier and was nominated by opposition parties. In parliamentary elections of 1996, the victory was won by the oppositional Democratic Union. The Democratic Union continued privatization, and froze prices, purged a state machinery from dicks of Nori. Return to the power of Nori became result. In May 1997, the candidate of this party, N. Nagabandi, became the president of Mongolia, and in 2000 the party won elections to Great National Hurul. At the beginning of the ode, because of frosts in the country, about a third of a livestock of the cattle died. In 2004, Norian parliamentary elections received only 38 mandates that led to formation of the coalition government led by the Democrates. Elbigdorzim. Soon Nori took a revenge. The candidate An Inkbai won at presidential elections of 2005. And in 2006 10-member ministers of Nori left the coalition government that led to his resignation. 2008 Yertikni Revolution. The same year after the parliamentary elections, the coalition government was formed. 8 takes of Nori and 5 members of Democratic Party. At presidential elections of 2010, the victory was won by the representative of Democratic Party Ts. Elbigdort. In 2012, the Democratic Party received the majority of seats in parliament. In 2016, there took place the next elections to Great State Hurul. The Mongolian People's Party won. Mongolia, the Parliamentary Republic. Here the Constitution of Mongolia of January 13, 1992, which came into force on February 12, 1992 works. On November 21, 1991, the Great National Hurul made the decision to change the name of the country and after entry into force of the new constitution. On February 12, 1992, Nana began to be called Mongolia. The head of state, the president elected on an alternative basis by general direct and a ballot for a period of 4 years. The president can be re-elected for 1 term. In the absence of the president, a function of the head of state, the chairman of great state hero executes. The president is also the commander-in-chief of armed forces of the country. The legislature is carried out by Parliament. The great state hero (PH) is a part of 76 sticks elected in public by a ballot for a period of 4 years. The chairman, the deputy chairman and the secretary general elected by a ballot from its structure head VH.
Executive power is carried out by the government formed by VH according to the proposal of the Prime Minister and coordination with the President.
The candidate for the Prime Minister the President submits for consideration VH. The government is accountable to VH. On places the power is carried out by local governments. In Makni city, regional and Samani heroes which deputies are elected by the population for a period of 4 years. From July 1996 to July 2000, the coalition of the new parties which won a victory in parliamentary elections in June 1996 ran the country. The largest in the coalition was the Mongolian National Democratic Party, MN, formed in 1992 on the basis of merge of a number of the liberal and conservative parties and groups. In 2001, MN was renamed into Democratic Party. The coalition included also the Mongolian Social Democratic Party. MSP is founded in 1990. Green Party, Ecological and Religious Democratic Party, Clerical and Liberal, is created in 1990. On elections of 2000, earlier ruling Mongolian National Revolutionary Party, NARI, returned to the power.
NARI was created as the Mongolian People's Party on the basis of merge in July 1920 of 2 underground revolutionary circles. The party program adopted at her I Congress in March 1921 was guided by anti-imperialist, anti-feudal national revolution.
Since July 1921 I became ruling party. I established close ties with the Soviet Communists and Comintern. The Three Congress of Mind in August 1924 officially proclaimed a course towards transition from feudalism by socialism, passing capitalism, that was enshrined in the party program adopted at the Four Congress in 1925. In March 1925 Mind renamed into MNARI, which turned into the Marxist-Leninist Party. The program approved by the 10 Congress 1940 provided transition from a revolutionary democratic stage of development to socialist, and Program 1966, completion of construction of socialism.
However, in the early 90s MNARI officially refused Marxism-Leninism and began to support transition to market economy during the maintaining stability of society and rise in welfare of the population.
The new program adopted in February 1997 defines her as Democratic and Socialist Party.
Besides two main political forces in Mongolia, also other parties and the organizations work. The United Party of National Traditions, which united in 1993 several right groups, the Alliance of the Homeland,
which included the Mongolian Democratic New Socialist Party and the Mongolian Labour Party, etc.
On January 11, 2006 in Mongolia, the internal political crisis which began with split of the cabinet burst. Mongolian National Revolutionary Party
NARI declared the exit from the coalition government. On January 13 in Ulaanbaatar there were Massachusetts riots. About 1,500 supporters of the Prime Minister Tsokyagi in Elbegdorj representing Democratic Party DD gathered on the central square of Ulaanbaatar on a protest action against the dissolution of NARI. They beat out glass doors of a main entrance of the headquarters of NARI and, despite resistance of 300 police officers, rushed into the building. Forwards didn't find none of party leadership, but several hours the building were under their control.
These actions led to violation of peculiar truce between two largest political forces of the country. The present government coalition was created as a result of difficult and long negotiations after elections of 2004 when any of two main parties didn't receive enough seats in parliament for independent formation of the government.
NARI received 38 places from 76, DD-34 places. Following the results of negotiations, NOR received 10 of 18 portfolios, and DD-8 in the Prime Minister's post.
In the evening on January 13, the Parliament of Mongolia voted for resignation of the coalition government.
Though as a result of elections on June 29, 2008 almost complete control was received by the Mongolian National Revolutionary Party. 46 deputy places from 76. It created the coalition government. The number of briefcases is distributed. 60% NARI and 40% DD. On July 1, 2008 voters of Democratic Party and other opposition parties organized protest against, according to them, falsifications of results of last elections, later poured out in disorders, numerous arsons and robberies in the center of Ulaanbaatar at which suppression by the authorities 5 people died, a large number of rioters were wounded, hundreds of people were arrested. On June 29, 2017 the position of the president was entered by Haltmagin Batulga, Democratic Party. He became the 5th president of Mongolia. NARI officially returned itself the old name, Mongolian People's Party. MP. The name NARI was reserved by the small party allocated from it.
Mongolia has the area of 1,564,116 km.
The 19th place in the world. And the plateau. The sublime plain with the plain or wavy poorly dismembered surface limited to distinct ledges from the next flat spaces. Raised on height of 900-1500 m above sea level generally represents. Extent from the north on the south is 1260 km, and from the west on the east -2400 km. Over this plateau a number of the massif and ridges towers.
The highest of them, the Mongolian Altai, stretched in the west and the southwest of the territory of the country on distance of 900 km. As continuation lower, not forming the uniform massive ridges which received the general name the Gobi Altai. Along border with Siberia in the northwest of Mongolia several ridges which aren't forming the uniform massif are located.
Hanghui, Ulan-Taiga, East Sayan Mountains, in the northeast, the Massif Henti, in the central part of Mongolia, the Hangai Array which is divided into several independent ridges. From Ulaanbaatar towards border with China, height of the Mongolian plateau gradually decreases by the east and the south, and it passes into plains, flat and equal in the east, hilly in the south. The southwest and the southeast of Mongolia are occupied by the Gobi Desert, which proceeds in the north of the central part of China. On landscape signs of Gobi, the desert not uniform. It consists of sites of the sandy, rocky, covered with small splinters stones equal on many kilometers and hilly, different in color. Mongols allocate especially yellow, red and black Gobi. Land-based sources of water are very rare here, but the level of underground water is high. The rivers of Mongolia are born in mountains. Most of them an upper course of the great rivers of Siberia and the Far East, bearing the waters towards Arctic and quiet oceans. The largest rivers of the country, Selenga. In borders of Mongolia -600 km. Karalan 1100 km. Tesingal 568 km. Onan 300 km. Hakrangal, Kov, etc. The deepest Selenga. It originates from one of ridges Hungea and accepts in itself several large inflows, Orkan, Hanigal, Chalutangal, Dalgarmuran, etc. Speed of her current from 1.5 to 3 ms. In any weather her fast cold waters which are flowing in Urgala are herbaceous coast, and therefore, always muddy, having dark grey color. Selenga freezes for half a year, the average thickness of ice, from 1 to 1.5 m. She has 2 floods in a year. Spring, snow, and summer, rain. Average depth at the lowest water level, not less than 2 m. Having left borders of Mongolia, Selenga flows across the territory of Buryatia and flows into Baikal. The rivers in the western and southwest parts of the country, flowing down from mountains, get to intermountain hollows. They have no exit to the ocean and, as a rule, finish the way in one of lakes.
In Mongolia there are over 1,000 constant lakes and much bigger quantity temporary, formed in the period of rains and disappearing in the period of a drought. In the early Quaternary period the considerable part of the territory of Mongolia represented the closed sea divided once several later large reservoirs.
Present lakes, what from them remained. The largest of them are in Great Lakes Depression in the northwest of the country, Upsunur, Charasnur, Harjasnur, whose depth doesn't exceed several meters. In the east of the country there are lakes Birnur and Huknur. In the huge tectonic hollow to the north from Hungea Lake Hupsagal. Depth up to 238 m. Similar to Baikal in composition of water, relic flora and fauna is located. In Mongolia sharply continental climate with severe winter and in the dry hot summer.
Climate of Mongolia, it is probable, the most sharply continental on the planet.
In the capital, the city of Ulaanbaatar, located approximately in the middle between the massif of the northwest and a desert droughty zone of the southeast of the country, temperature fluctuates from -25, 35 C in the winter, to +25, 35 C in the summer. Ulaanbaatar, one of the coldest winter capitals in the world. The coldest month, January. If in the northwest 250, 510 of rainfall, then in Ulaanbaatar, only 230, 300 manually drop out, even less rainfall drops out in the desert region of Gobi. In mountainous areas, in the north and the west of the country often happens cold. On the most part of the country in the summer, hot and very cold in the winter, with the average values of January which are going down to 30 C. Mongolia is divided into 21 AMEGs which, in turn, incorporate 329 SUMs. The capital, Ulaanbaatar, is an independent administrative unit. Because of existence in the country of a significant amount of temporary settlements. SUMs. Changing spatial situation with time, traditional address systems. The city, the street, the house. Not two are suitable for Mongolia. On February 2, 2008, the government of Mongolia made the decision on adaptation for needs of the country of technology of the Universal Address System. English Universal Address System. That is use of Natural Area Code. NAC. For addressing of objects on the area. This system allows to address on the area within Earth both the whole regions, and the cities, certain houses and even small objects with an accuracy of meter. The address, the longer the code is more precisely specified. For example, the address of the city of Ulaanbaatar in general, Rarw Cheese, and a monument in the center of Sukbator Square in Ulaanbaatar, Roskestsel.
The essence of the address NAC code is very simple and similar to the nomenclature system of a name of single sheets of cards of a large-scale row or to the system of spatial indexation, Oracle Spatial. The Universal Address System has global character and while is suitable for use in the systems of digital cartography, geomorphology and navigation systems. Though bigger number of people live in the cities, the economy of Mongolia is concentrated in such industries as mining and agriculture.
Such mineral resources as copper, coal, molybdenum, tin, tungsten and gold make a considerable part of industrial production of the country. During the period from 1924 to 1991, Mana received the large financial and economic help from the USA. 1/3 of her DDD falls on peak of rendering this help. In the early 90s and next decade, the economy of Mongolia experienced strong recession with the subsequent stagnation. DDD on PPS minus $15.17 billion. 2012. DDD per capita on PPS. 2012. Minus $5,400. Unemployment rate minus 10%. 2018. Export. $6. 88 billion in 2017. Coal. 33%. Copper. 24%. Gold. 18%. Crude oil. 5.4%. Iron ore. 4.3%. Wool. 3.4%. The main buyers in 2017: China, 76%. Switzerland, 9.6%. Great Britain, 9.6%. Share of Russia, 0.83%. Import, $4.5 billion in 2017. Machines and equipment, 21.1%. Oil products, 18%. Vehicles, 14.7%. Ready-made products of food and cigarette, 8.6%. Chemicals 7.1%. And also metallurgical products, consumer goods, wood, etc. The main suppliers in 2017: China 32%, Russia 28%, Japan 8.7%. External debt $18.67 billion for December 31, 2016. Mongolia is a member of the World Trade Organization since 1997. The main trade partners of the country are China and Russia, and the economy of Mongolia in many respects depends on these countries. In 2006, 4% of export of Mongolia were carried out to China, while only 29.8% were the share of import. The average amount of compensation in 2019 is $1,025,600, $393.25 gross, and $923,040, $353.93 net. Since January 1, 2019, the minimum wage makes card
$122,
gross, and card $110.43 net. Since January 1, 2020, the minimum wage makes card $160.51 gross. The population, according to data of national statistics and to data of the Union, on the middle of 2010, was 3.1 million people. Assessment of Bureau of Censuses of the USA for November 2010 makes 2.8 million people. 1.99 persons are the share of 1 square kilometer. Annual gain minus 1.44%. 2013. Fertility minus 2.23 childbirth on the woman. Infantile mortality minus 40 on 1,000 given rise. Average life expectancy 65 years at men, 70 years at women. Ethnic structure Halka-Mongol minus 94.9%, Turkic peoples, generally Kazakhs minus 5%, Chinese and Russians minus 0.1%. Speaks more than 95% of the population Mongolian. High schools also study traditional Mongolian writing. It is considered that about 9 million Mongols live out of Mongolia, including about 7 million in China. In Russia, according to a census of 2010, Halka-Mongol, there were 2986 people. Besides the people Buryats, 461,389 persons. And Kalmyks, 183,372 persons. Live in Russia related to Mongols.
In 1578 in the country the Tibetan Buddhism was officially accepted, however the shamanism continues to practice a small part of the population.
First of all, in the north of the country. By the time of the National Revolution of 1921 in the country there were 755 Buddhist monasteries and 120,000 monks and priests. At the general population of the country in 650,000 people. At the end of 1934 in Mongolia there were 843 main Buddhist monasteries, about 300 temples and chapels and 600 other buildings belonging to monasteries. Monks made 48% of adult male population. As a result of repressions, by the end of the 1930th years all monasteries were closed or destroyed, and their property is nationalized. However, only the part of buildings was used, the overwhelming part of monasteries is destroyed. From all only relatively remained. By the minimum assessment, 18,000 monks were executed. Remains of 5,000 shot monks. That is over 1% of all adult population of the country for that period. Were found only in one of the Massachusetts burials found in the city of Murren. After World War II the anti-religious policy was softened. In 1949 in Ulaanbaatar the monastery Ganden was open again. Since 1970 at him there began work the Buddhist University. In 1979 and 1982 Mongolia was visited by Dalai Lama of 14.
Probably management manner as well as Soviet, considered the religious organization as body of fight for peace. Therefore the Buddhist community of Mongolia since 1969 became the DIC of the Asian Buddhist Conference for the World.
The freedom of worship declared by the Constitution of 1960 was provided only in the late 80s, and revival of the traditional Buddhism, shamanism, Islam began among Kazakhs. Since the beginning of the 1990th years there began the activity foreign Christian missions, Baptist, Munist and Mormons.
The central registration of the religious communities isn't provided by the legislation of Mongolia, therefore provided in the Statistical Yearbook of Mongolia for 2007 the data on the number of monasteries and temples which arrived from places.
Only in and what within a year religious services were held. Don't differ in completeness. 138 Buddhist.
Including in Amagd Bayanulchi, Gov Altai, Gov Sumber and Amigav only on.
89 Christian. From them 64 in Ulaanbaatar, 12 in Darkhan, 6 in Erdaneta. 20 Islamic. 17 in the Amagd Bayanulchi and 3 in Havda. And 2 others. In 2011 in the country there were about 170 Buddhist temples and monasteries and 100 lamas.
Gallup service by results of the global poll conducted in 2007-2008 placed Mongolia on the 10th place among the least religious countries of the world.
Between France and Belarus.
Only 27% of the interviewed respondents said that the religion is an important part of everyday life.
The Tibetan Buddhism is traditional religion of all Mongoloid people and nationalities of Mongolia and also Turkic-speaking Tuvinians.
Buddhists make 53% of the population, absolute majority in all regions of Mongolia except for the Amagd Bayanulchi. Occur among them also a quantity of the shamanist, most often combining confession of the Buddhism, therefore exact definition of a share of shamanist isn't possible.
The Kazakhs making 88.7% of the population of the Amagd Bayanulchi and 11.5% of the population of the Amagd of Havd. Several thousands of Kazakhs migrated to Ulaanbaatar, etc. The largest cities of the north of the country traditionally practice Sunni Islam. Their number in 1956 was 37,000, 4.3% of the population. By 1989 increased up to 121,000, 6.1% of the population. Massachusetts' repatriation of Kazakhs or Almanov to Kazakhstan led to reduction of their number up to 103,000, 4.3%. In 2000. However, by 2007 the number of Kazakhs increased up to 140,000, 5.4% of the population. Again, the number of other Muslim ethnoses, Uzbeks, Uyghurs, Tatars, etc., in the sum doesn't exceed several honeycombs people. In the northwest of Mongolia in the Upsanursky Amide there is small
9,000 people according to a census of 2000, 7,000 people according to the current registration account in 2007.
An ethnic group of Khotan which were moved to Mongolia from East Turkestan Street 300 years ago and at the time were Muslim Turkic peoples. Lately Khotona apprehended Mongolian, and the most part of Islamic ceremonialism was forced out adopted at the surrounding population Buddhist and Shamanistsky. Khotona kept only some elements of Islamic traditions, in particular trimming. Now in the environment of Khotan Islamic self-identification grows. According to the Encyclopedia of Religions, J. Shi. Maltona in 2010 in Mongolia there were 47.1 thousand Christians. The Pew Research Center counted in the country 60,000 Christians.
At the same time, in the decade 2010 the Christianity was the most fast-growing religion of the country.
Annual gain was 6%. Most of the Mongolian Christians, parishioners of various Protestant churches. 40,000 believers. The number of Catholics is estimated at 200 people. 9,000 more believers belong to marginal Christianity, mainly Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses. According to church sources, in 2007 at least 250 more unregistered evangelic churches worked in the country. In the country 1.4 thousand people adhere to Orthodoxy. A considerable share of parishioners of Sacred and Troitsk parish of Russian Orthodox Church in Ulaanbaatar is made by the natives of the former USSR who settled in the city and also citizens of the Russian Federation, Ukraine, Belarus and other countries coming to Mongolia for work, study or rest. In 2009 in Ulaanbaatar the Orthodox Troitsk Church was consecrated. By Troitsk's arrival the Orthodox newspaper in Mongolian began to be issued. There are construction plans of the temple chapel in Erdaneta. The culture of Mongolia is under strong influence of a traditional Mongolian nomadic way of life and also under the influence of Tibetan Buddhism, the Chinese and Russian cultures. Love to the origin and family are appreciated in the Mongolian culture. It is shown in everything. From old Mongolian literature before modern pop music. Other major characteristic feature of Stepniak is the hospitality. Yurta, an important component of the Mongolian national originality. Up to the present the Mongols who are engaged in cultivation of the cattle and kept a nomadic way of life live in yurtas. Education, one of the priority directions of domestic policy of Mongolia. So far the illiteracy in the country is almost destroyed, thanks to creation of seasonal boarding schools for children from families of nomads. In 2003 the illiterate population in Mongolia made 2%. Ten years education was obligatory for all children from 6 to 16 years. 6 of them elementary school. Compulsory school education, however, was prolonged for 2 years for all first graders in 2008-2009 academic year. The new system, thus, won't be put completely into operation up to 2019-2020 academic years. Besides, courses of vocational training for young people at the age of 16-18 years are offered. Today in Mongolia there are enough universities.
The Mongolian State University in Ulaanbaatar, founded in 1942, the largest and oldest university of the country.
Since 1990 in Mongolia there are social changes and improvements in healthcare. There are many opportunities for improvement, especially in sparsely populated areas. Infantile mortality in Mongolia -4.3%, while average life expectancy of women makes 70 years. For men -65 years. The general coefficient of birth rate in the country, CP, -1.87. The healthcare system includes 17 specialized hospitals, 4 regional diagnostic and health center, 9 district hospitals, 21 Amakni and 323 Samani hospitals. Besides, there are 536 private hospitals. In 2002 in the country there were 33273 workers of healthcare, from whom 6823 doctors. Some of the earliest examples of the Mongolian fine arts, rock paintings and bronze and copper weapon with images of animals. There is also a stone stele of the Iron Age. Graphic canons of Tibetan Buddhism and also the Indian, Nepalese and Chinese art had a strong impact on the Mongolian art. At the beginning of the 20th century in Mongolia the tradition of secular painting began to develop. Boldugin Sharov became her founder. After the revolution long time the socialist realism was the only admissible style in the Mongolian painting, and only in the 1960th years artists had an opportunity to depart from canons. Shoidajin Bozavon and Badamzovan Chogson were the first representatives of modernism in Mongolia. The oldest literary and historical monument is The Intimate Legend by Mongols, 13th century. In the 13th-15th century stories, the narration about 32 wooden people, literature of didactic character are created. Lectures of Chingisana, a reason key, Shastra about the wise boy, the orphan and 9 associates of Chingisana, the story about 2 racers of Chingisana. Buddhist treatises are translated from Sanskrit, the Tibetan and Uyghur languages.
In the 18th century, after the long period of distempers, the translation of Buddhist literature from Tibetan and also novels and short stories from Chinese renews.
After the revolution of 1921 the translations of works of art from Russian appear. One of founders of modern Mongolian literature is the writer, the poet and the public figure Dastushin Natsugdorz, the first translator of works A.S. Pushkina into Mongolian. Classical works of the world literature are translated from the 1958 years into Mongolian. The Mongolian prose and poetry receives the powerful push to development marked by such names as Chech, Ladoidambe, B. Renchen, B.
Yevupulan. Works by these authors were included into the Library of the Mongolian Literature, published in the Usur in the first half of the 1980th years in 16 volumes.
The poet and writer Mr.
Erzana awarded in 2003 with an award of the Union of the Mongolian Writers, a gold feather, for the novel Mirage, treats generation of young writers of the beginning of the 21st century.
The Tool Ensemble takes the important place in the Mongolian music. National tools: Jus harp, so-called Mongolian violoncello, and lim, bamboo flute. There are traditional works for key tools in the Mongolian music. The vocal art also has long tradition, which received the brightest expression in so-called lingering songs. Some of these songs: Thresholds of Kerulin, Top of Happiness and Well-Being, and so on, are known since the 17th century, and the manner of their execution carefully passes from father to son. In the 20th century, synthesis of the Western classical music with traditional Mongolian began. The opera Three Sad Hills, musical plays by the composer S. Ponchesum.
From the second half of the 20th century, the variety and jazz genre began to develop.
Nodam, one of two traditional national holidays of Mongolia along with Sagansar. Annual festivals pass across all Mongolia from July 11 to July 13. Games consist of the Mongolian fight, archery and horse races. In modern sports, Mongols are traditionally strong in single types. It is boxing, freestyle wrestling, judo, bullet firing. A number of the Olympic awards having per capita, Mongolia advances many advanced countries. The first successful athlete of the international level from Mongolia is the fighter of freestyle Jagudin Mongbat, the bronze prize winner of the World Wrestling Championship of 1967, at the Summer Olympic Games of 1968, remaining undefeated and having conceded only on points in the overall ranking. He won a silver medal.
Active rates develops quite exotic sports for Mongols as bodybuilding and powerlifting.
Mongols achieved very good results in a type of fight of sumo, sacred for Japan. Since the end of the 20th century, Mongols undividedly dominate in this sport. In the highest division, 42 fighters, from them 12 Mongols fight.
Sometime two Mongols possessed the highest title of the Japanese national fight of Eiyokadзun, but after resignation of Eiyokadzuna to Asashore.
Dolbersur and Dagadors. In January 2010, on only one acted, great champion, Hakuko Davodzargal Mongbat.
For July 16, 2014, on two more Mongolian Yokozuna act.
Harimafatsi the horse. Devan Yaman Bayam Batters. Since 2012, and Kakuri Draken.
Mongols 11 Anand.
Since 2014. The Mongolian media were closely connected with Soviet through Mnari. The Unan newspaper, Trut, reminded the Pravda.
The government-controlled media up to democratic reforms of the 1990th years tightly.
The state newspapers were privatized only in 1999. After the rapid development of media began. More than 300,000 numbers a year is the share of 600 national newspapers. There is a broadcasting state radio company, Mongolia Radio. It is founded in 1934. And the state TV company, Mongol Televiz. It is founded in 1967. Mongolia Radio has 3 channels of internal broadcasting. 2 in Mongolian and 1 on Kazakh.
Also, Mongolian State Radio conducts since 1964 transfers on the channel of broadcasting to foreign countries known as the Voice of Mongolia.
Transfers are conducted in the Mongolian, Russian, English, Chinese and Japanese languages. The Mongolian State Television has Mongol Televiz, 2 channels. Almost all citizens have access to state TV channel. Besides these state companies, in the country there are about 100 private radio and 40 TV channels. Almost all of them daily air, also issues of newspapers and magazines are issued. Almost all inhabitants have access not only to local TV channels, but also to cable television with 50 channels which switched also on several Russian channels.
The international information telecommunication between Mongolia, the People's Republic of China and the regions of Russia adjoining on them is well developed.
The number of armed forces minus 10.3 thousand people. 2012. Completing is carried out at the call of service life makes 12 months. Men aged from 18 to 25 years are called. Mobilization resources minus 819,000 people, including suitable for military service minus 530. 6,000 demand. Arms. 620 tanks. 370 T-54 and T-tanks minus 55, 250 tanks T-minus 62. 120 Bream minus 2, 310 Bami minus 1, 150 Tro minus 60, 450 Tro minus 80, 450 Pos tools, 130 Aza B minus 21, 140 mortars, 200 anti-tank guns of calibers of 85 and 100. Air defense. 800 people, 8 warplanes, 11 combat helicopters. Plane and helicopter park. 8 MiG-21 of PFM, 2 MiG-21 US, 15 and -2, 12 and -24, 3 and -26, 2 Boeing 727, 4 of the Chinese Harbin Y-12 plane, 11 Mi-24 helicopters. Land air defense. 150 storages and 250 air.
Now an army of Mongolia, the reform directed to increase in fighting capacity and updating of the VV technical park is undertaken.
In this process active part is taken by the Russian, American and other experts. Since 2002 Mongolia participates in peacekeeping activity. During this time 3,200 Mongolian servicemen took part in different operations. 1,800 from them served under the mandate of the Union, and remained 1,400 under the international mandate. The military budget of Mongolia makes 1.4% of the budget of the country. In Mongolia there is motor, railway, water, river, and air transport. The Selenga rivers, Orkhon and Lake Hupsagul are available to navigation. In Mongolia, two main railway lines. The railroad Chobolsyn-Borzi connects Mongolia with Russia, and the Trans-Mongolian Railroad begins with the Trans-Siberian Railroad in Russia in the city of Ulanud, crosses Mongolia, passes through Ulaanbaatar, and then through Zamenhof goes to China on Iranhota, where joins the Chinese railway system. The majority of overland roads in Mongolia gravel or soil. Roads with a hard coating, from Ulaanbaatar to all centers of Amags and the Russian and Chinese borders. Mongolia has a number of domestic airports. The only international airport, the International Airport Genghis Khan near Ulaanbaatar. Through air traffic exists between Mongolia and South Korea, China, Japan, Russia, Kazakhstan and Germany. Mongolia is the second, after Kazakhstan, across the territory, the country in the world which doesn't have a direct exit to any ocean. But since February 2003 in the country there is the ship register. The Mongolia Ship Registry TE Limited. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.